My name is Hannah Collins, and I was 32 years old when Christmas shattered every illusion I still held about my family. That night should have been warm and joyful, but instead it became the breaking point that pushed me to finally choose myself. The house was glowing with colored lights. A giant bow shimmered in the driveway, though I did not yet know it was meant for someone else. Inside, relatives laughed, the smell of cinnamon rolls drifting through the air. I had driven home believing just maybe this year would be different. I had worked harder than ever, earned a promotion in architectural design, and wrapped thoughtful presents for every member of the family. In my heart, I hoped my parents would finally look at me and see more than the dependable, older daughter who never needed anything. We gathered around the Christmas tree, the same artificial one we had used since childhood. Stockings hung in birth order across the mantel: Robert, Diane, Hannah, Heather. My father cleared his throat with a smile, telling everyone there was a special surprise. My sister Heather leaned forward, her boyfriend grinning beside her. The golden box was handed to her, and when she opened it, a silver key glinted in the light. The Audi logo shone like a crown. She squealed, her voice filling the room. The whole family rushed outside to admire the brand-new white Audi parked proudly in the driveway. I clapped weakly, my hands trembling. I whispered congratulations, but inside my chest caved. I had spent more than $35,000 less on myself than that car was worth, because my salary did not even reach that amount in a year. And yet that car was given freely to her, as a symbol of love and faith in her future. When the crowd returned inside, cheeks flushed from the cold, my mother suddenly remembered me. "Oh, Hannah, we did not forget you," she said with a bright smile. She handed me a small box wrapped in leftover birthday paper. My heart fluttered for one foolish second. Maybe they had saved something meaningful for last. Maybe they had noticed my long hours, my careful effort to succeed, my desire to belong. I opened it slowly. Inside was a pink ceramic piggy bank. Next to it lay a crisp $1 bill. My mother beamed as if she had given me treasure. "It is our contribution to your future home, sweetie. Every journey begins with a single step." The room fell quiet. Even the cousins, who usually filled silences with chatter, stared at the floor. My throat tightened. I forced a smile and whispered, "Wow, thanks." But inside, 32 years of longing crashed like glass against concrete. That night, while the others drank wine and posed for pictures with Heather's new car, I carried my suitcase to my childhood room. It had been converted into a storage space, boxes stacked against the walls. I sat on the twin bed surrounded by evidence that my memories were less important than tax files and holiday decorations. The piggy bank rested on the nightstand, mocking me with its emptiness. Something snapped inside me. Tears stung, but they were not only of grief, they were clarity. I finally understood love here would always be conditional. Approval would always belong to Heather. Recognition would always arrive too late, if at all. I zipped my suitcase. I did not wait until morning. While the others slept, I loaded my car, an old Honda I had bought on my own, and drove away from the house with its perfect decorations and hollow warmth. My phone buzzed with a message, but I ignored it. The road stretched before me, dark and endless. For the first time in my life, I was not chasing their approval. I was chasing my freedom. Amija. I was still gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles pale against the leather, when the weight of what I had just done hit me. I had left my parents' home on Christmas night without saying goodbye. The headlights cut through the snowy darkness, the sound of tires crunching over ice, the only witness to my escape. My chest was tight, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was the terrifying freedom of choosing myself for the very first time. The road stretched long and silent. Houses along the way glowed with warmth, windows lit with Christmas trees and laughter I could only imagine. I thought about turning back more than once, but then my mind replayed the image of Heather holding her new Audi key like it was a crown. The sound of my mother's cheerful voice as she handed me that ridiculous piggy bank and dollar. The silence that followed heavy with unspoken pity. I realized if I turned back now, I would bury myself in that silence forever. I pulled into a rest stop and sat in the car staring at my reflection in the dark windshield. 32 years of swallowing hurt of convincing myself that next time would be different. It never was. I had packed more than clothes, I had packed my breaking point. Before I tell you what happened next, let me pause here and ask you something. Where are you watching this from tonight? Drop it in the comments because I want to know how far this story is reaching. And if you connect with what I am sharing, make sure you hit subscribe so you can be here for the rest of this journey. I took a deep breath and opened my phone. My best friend's name lit the screen, Samantha. She had always been the one who saw me when my family refused to. I hesitated, thumb hovering over her contact. It was past midnight Christmas night, but she answered after 2 rings, her voice warm, steady, the complete opposite of the cold silence I had left behind. "What's going on, Hannah? Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I admitted, my voice cracking. It happened again. Worse than ever. Heather got a brand new Audi and I got a piggy bank with $1 inside. There was a pause and then a sharp breath. "Are you kidding me? That's not just tone-deaf, Hannah. That's cruel." Her outrage made me feel less alone. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but this time they weren't silent. Tears of shame. They were tears of validation. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "Then don't," Samantha replied simply, her voice firm but kind. "My guest room is yours. Seattle is only 3 hours away. Your company has an office here. You could transfer. You could start over." Her words sank into me like a revelation. She was right. I had options. I wasn't chained to that house, that family, that narrative of being the responsible one who never needed anything. But then guilt crept in. "It's Christmas," I murmured. "I should be with them. You should be with people who value you," she interrupted. "Christmas will happen with or without you. The real question is, how much longer are you willing to let them diminish you?" Her words pierced deeper than any knife, because I knew the answer. Not another year, not another holiday, not another day. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding with the terrifying possibility of freedom. And slowly, like frost melting in morning sun, the fear began to dissolve. I would not return to that house. Not tonight. Not ever, at least, not on their terms. For the first time, I felt the faintest spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could build a life where I was not invisible. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine. When I tell people that my breaking point came at 32, they often ask why I didn't walk away sooner. The truth is, I had been conditioned since childhood to believe my needs didn't matter. That was my normal. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, our house looked perfect. From the outside, white fence, manicured hedges, wreaths on the door, every holiday. But behind those doors, the story was always the same. Heather, my younger sister, was the center. And I was the background. It started the day she was born. I was 7, old enough to notice how the spotlight shifted forever. My straight A's received quick nods. Her participation ribbon earned an ice cream party. I'll never forget my 10th birthday. My parents forgot the cake because they were shopping for her nursery furniture. At dinner, when I tried to hold back tears, my mother stuck a candle in a dinner roll and told me to make a wish. That was my celebration. Whenever I dared to speak up, my father had the same line, "You're the big sister. You're old enough to understand." And so responsibility became my identity. By 12, I was cooking meals while Mom was busy with Heather, By 14, I was babysitting so they could attend her dance recitals or take her shopping. Meanwhile, the things that mattered to me never seemed to matter to them. I was on the debate team. I reached the finals, even brought home trophies. My parents never came to a single competition. "We know you'll do great without us there," Mom said once, squeezing my shoulder, as if independence was supposed to feel like love. Independence wasn't a choice, it was survival. I learned to fill out my own college applications, drive myself to events, help myself with homework. By the time I was 18, I had mastered the art of pretending I didn't need anyone. Heather, on the other hand, was never left to fend for herself. Dad gave her driving lessons. Mom hired tutors when her grades slipped. Every small success was celebrated loudly. At my high school graduation, my parents hosted a party for me because it was expected, but spent most of the night bragging about Heather's middle school art project. Looking back, the message was always clear: she was the dreamer, the precious one. I was the worker, the one who would be fine. Even my acceptance into the state university with a partial scholarship barely registered. My parents mentioned it only after bragging about Heather's latest drawing. That's why when I walked across the stage at college graduation, my eyes scanned the crowd for them. They weren't there. They had been delayed by a minor fender bender Heather had that morning. When they finally arrived, they made me pose for family pictures with Heather, positioned between them, smiling like the star. Do you see the pattern? It wasn't just Christmas. It wasn't just one gift. It was decades of being told silently and loudly that I would never measure up. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they never bothered to look. And here's where I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever been the responsible one while someone else got the spotlight? If you have, share it in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. Those years of invisibility shaped me. They taught me how to survive on my own. But they also carved a hunger in me for recognition, for love, freely given, for someone to see me not as the independent daughter who would be fine, but as a person who deserved care too. That hunger followed me into adulthood, and eventually it would collide with the cruelest Christmas of my life. By the time I reached high school, being the responsible one was not just a label, it was my entire existence. My parents repeated it so often that it became my identity, almost like a job title I never applied for. Heather was the baby, the one who needed attention. I was the one who could handle things, the one who would be fine. At 12, I was already cooking dinner when Mom was busy with Heather's endless activities. At 14, I was officially the built-in babysitter, staying home while my parents attended her recitals or shopping trips. If Heather had a meltdown, everything stopped to calm her down. If I was overwhelmed, I was told to be mature. That phrase echoed through my teenage years like a command I could never escape. When my debate team reached the state finals, I begged my parents to come. They smiled and told me, "We know you'll do great without us." They never showed up. I came home with the trophy clutched in my hand, only to find the living room covered in balloons for Heather's participation award at a local dance event. Independence became my shield. I filled out my own college applications because no one had time to help. I spent nights alone in the kitchen, practicing speeches while washing dishes. I learned to iron my clothes for interviews, to manage rides to school events, to navigate the adult world years before I was ready. And when it came to money, the difference cut even deeper. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus coffee shop to cover my expenses. Summers meant full-time retail jobs just to save enough for the next semester. I graduated with honors in architectural design and $27,000 in student loans. My parents did not contribute. Heather, she enrolled 3 years later in an art program. Her tuition was fully covered by Mom and Dad. Art programs are demanding, they said. She won't have time to work. They subsidized her rent in a trendy neighborhood. When she graduated, she was gifted 3 months in Europe to expand her horizons. I remember standing at my own graduation ceremony cap, tight on my head gown, brushing the floor. I scanned the seats, desperate to see their faces as I walked the stage. They weren't there. Heather had gotten into a minor car accident that morning, and my parents were with her. They missed my moment entirely. When they finally arrived, they insisted we take family photos, but placed Heather between them, as if I were a supporting character in her story. I learned then that responsibility is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it made me resilient. I knew how to survive, how to push forward, even when no one had my back. On the other, it taught me that my achievements would never matter as much as Heather's struggles. That no matter what I did, my role in the family was not to be celebrated, but to endure. And enduring left scars. Every loan payment, every missed celebration, every ignored milestone reminded me of one truth: I had always been expected to carry the weight while Heather was carried. Looking back, I sometimes wonder, did I accept too much? Did I allow their narrative of "you'll be fine" to silence me? Maybe. But when you are a child, you believe what you are told. And I was told again and again that my sister's needs outweighed my own. The unfairness grew louder with every passing year, but I swallowed it, convincing myself that one day when I was successful enough, they would finally see me. That hope carried me through endless nights of work and study, but hope can be dangerous when it is tied to people who refuse to see you. Adulthood was supposed to be my chance to step out of the shadow. I thought that once I left for college, I would finally be recognized for who I was. But even in adulthood, the same story played out. I worked hard, proved myself, and yet I remained invisible. My first job after graduation wasn't glamorous. It was an entry-level position at a small architectural firm, modest pay, but a path toward growth. I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment, filled it with secondhand furniture, and carefully budgeted each month to cover loan payments. Every choice I made was deliberate, shaped by necessity. Still, I felt proud. I was building a life on my own terms. But family gatherings told a different story. At every holiday, relatives asked, "So Hannah, when will you find a real job or meet someone nice?" My degree and promotion barely registered. It was as if my work was a placeholder until I checked the boxes. They valued marriage, children, settling down. Meanwhile, Heather's journey looked very different. She graduated with average grades, but my parents paid a consultant to build her portfolio. They funded a 3-month trip across Europe to broaden her artistic perspective. When she returned, they covered her rent in a trendy neighborhood while she found herself. I couldn't help comparing. While I balanced bills and loan payments, Heather painted in cafes and posted photos from Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. She had the freedom to dream because I was denied that same cushion. The contrast sharpened the night I got my first real promotion. I had spent 5 years proving myself, and finally I became a senior designer. My salary increase wasn't enormous, but it was meaningful proof that I was building a career. I called my parents immediately, hoping this time they would beam with pride. "That's nice, honey," my mother said distractedly. Then she added, "Did I tell you Heather is dating a doctor?" "Well, he's a medical student, but still." Her words stung. My accomplishment vanished under the weight of Heather's new relationship. It didn't matter that I had fought tooth and nail to reach this point. All they saw was the sparkle of Heather's future, no matter how uncertain or subsidized. Even so, I clung to hope. I believed if I just gave more, did more, sacrificed more, they would finally recognize me. That belief carried me into the holiday season. I stretched my budget to buy thoughtful gifts, an expensive wallet for Dad, a cashmere scarf for Mom, concert tickets for Heather's favorite band. My car was loaded with silver-wrapped boxes, each one representing my desperate attempt to prove my love and worth. Driving the 120 miles home, I told myself this Christmas would be different. Maybe my promotion would finally matter. Maybe my gifts would speak louder than words ever could. Maybe at 32 I would finally be seen. And before I take you deeper into what unfolded, let me pause to say this. If you've ever felt like you had to earn love through gifts, through achievements, through exhausting effort, hit subscribe. Join this community, because your story deserves to be heard, and you are not alone in it. That belief, that fragile hope was still burning in me when I pulled into the driveway on Christmas Eve. The house looked exactly the same as it had all those years before, lights outlining the roof, inflatable snowman swaying in the yard wreath with a velvet bow centered on the door. But this time beneath the glow, I felt something different. Not warmth, not comfort, anxiety. My stomach knotted as I stepped inside, sensing deep down that the cycle was about to repeat one final time. And I was right. I remember the exact moment I thought things might finally change. It was October, just a few months before that fateful Christmas. I had worked late nights, handled impossible deadlines, and proven myself on projects no one else wanted. And then finally the promotion came. Senior designer. My name on projects. My own clients. A salary increase that, though modest, represented years of struggle paying off. I was so proud. My hands trembled as I dialed my parents' number, desperate to hear pride in their voices. When Mom answered, I rushed into the news. I got promoted senior designer. I'm managing my own projects now. There was a pause. Then she said flatly, "That's nice, honey." And without skipping a beat, she added, "Did I tell you Heather is dating a doctor?" "Well, he's a medical student, but still." Her voice carried a brightness that had been missing when she responded to my news. My accomplishment shrank into silence. Their pride once again belonged to Heather, not for something she had achieved, but for someone she was dating. I hung up the phone and sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the second-hand lamp that buzzed faintly. My promotion, the thing I thought might bridge the distance, had been dismissed in seconds. The weight of 32 years pressed heavier on my chest. But still, I clung to hope. Christmas was coming. Maybe if I showed them my success in tangible ways, they would finally see me. I poured too much of my paycheck into gifts, an elegant wallet for Dad, a soft cashmere scarf for Mom, concert tickets for Heather. Each box was wrapped in silver paper, a silent plea disguised as a present. On Christmas Eve, I drove the 120 miles back to my childhood home. As the miles ticked by, I let myself imagine Dad unwrapping his wallet, Mom smiling over her scarf, Heather actually thanking me. Maybe my promotion would finally matter. Maybe love could be earned if I tried hard enough. The house looked exactly as it always had. Lights twinkled along the roof, the inflatable snowman swayed in the cold, and a perfect wreath hung on the door. Mom greeted me with a hug that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. Dad barely looked up from the game on TV. Heather swept in later, glamorous in her designer sweater, Kyle at her side. As always, I was placed in the role of helper. Mom asked me to peel sweet potatoes. Heather gushed about Kyle's gift. Dad pulled him into the living room to watch the Vikings game. When I tried to share my news again that I had been promoted, that I was finally building something, I got nothing but a distracted smile. "Drawing buildings pays the bills, huh?" Dad chuckled before turning back to Kyle. It was as though my voice had no weight, as though my achievements existed only to be overshadowed. I stood there peeling potatoes, my hands trembling with the effort to stay calm, wondering why I had expected anything different. That night, lying in my old room now, half storage space, half bed, I looked around at the boxes of tax records and holiday decorations piled against the walls. My trophies weren't there. My certificates weren't there. My childhood desk was buried under fabric for Mom's sewing projects. It was clear evidence that even my memories didn't deserve space. And still I told myself to hope. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. Tomorrow I would give them their gifts. Tomorrow maybe things would be different. But deep down I already knew the truth. Christmas Eve at the Wilson house had always followed the same script. Lights glowing outside, turkey roasting in the oven, laughter from the living room where the game played on TV. From the outside it looked like a postcard. Inside, though, the truth was harder. Mom gave me a quick hug at the door and led me upstairs. "Your room's ready," she said, opening the door with a too bright smile. But when I stepped inside, my chest sank. My childhood bedroom, the place where I had studied late at night, dreamed of my future, was now half guest room, half storage unit. Cardboard boxes labeled tax documents and holiday decorations lined the wall. My old desk was buried under Mom's sewing projects. "It's just for sleeping, right?" Mom chirped, as if that explained everything. "Heather's room is still the same, of course. She stays over more often than you." I nodded, trying not to let the sting show, but the truth was sharp. Heather's presence was honored. Mine was disposable. Back in the kitchen, I fell into my old role helper, peeling potatoes, carrying trays, making sure the appetizers stayed full while everyone else enjoyed themselves. Heather swept in, wearing a green sweater that matched her eyes. Kyle, her med student boyfriend, trailed behind, carrying wine bottles that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. Mom abandoned the turkey to gush over them. Dad thundered into the room, scooping Heather up in a hug before turning warmly to Kyle. Then he finally glanced at me. "Oh, Hannah, you're here already. How's the job?" "I was promoted to senior designer in October," I said, hopeful. "Drawing buildings pays the bills, huh?" He chuckled, already pulling Kyle toward the living room. That was it, a distracted smile, a half-hearted joke, nothing close to pride. The rest of the evening blurred into the same tired routine. Aunt Linda asked me when I planned to settle down, patting my arm with pity. Cousins chatted about engagements and babies. Every conversation circled back to Heather, her art, her internship, her exciting relationship. My promotion, my career, my struggles, invisible. By dinner, I was serving plates, pouring drinks, and cleaning dishes, all without being asked. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and simply assumed I would. Because that was my role, responsible Hannah, the one who always managed, who always filled the empty spaces. As the night wore on, I looked around the room filled with glowing faces, laughter traditions polished to perfection. And yet I felt like a ghost, present but unseen, essential but unacknowledged. It was a cruel paradox. Everything looked perfect. The family looked happy. But beneath the surface, the imbalance was suffocating. Heather reclined comfortably on the couch between our parents during the movie. Kyle had the recliner. I sat on the floor, my back aching against the coffee table, pretending I didn't mind. And that's when it hit me. For 32 years I had accepted this role. I had convinced myself it was temporary, that one day it would shift. But here I was, still the background character in my own family, still waiting for recognition that never came. I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked around a room full of people you love and realized you were invisible? That no matter what you did, your role was already written? Share your thoughts below. I want to hear how you faced it. As the credits of It's a Wonderful Life rolled, I leaned against the coffee table, tears burning in my eyes. George Bailey had discovered how much he mattered. I sat there wondering if I disappeared, would anyone in this room even notice? I didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question was waiting for me in the morning. Christmas Day dawned cold and clear. Snow glittered outside the frosted windows as the smell of bacon and coffee filled the kitchen. Of course, I was the one who had woken early to cook. Pancakes stacked high, bacon crisp coffee brewed strong, an unspoken tradition. Everyone else slept late, then drifted downstairs, yawning and stretching like honored guests. Heather appeared last, her hair perfectly tousled, as if she'd stepped out of an ad. She piled her plate without hesitation. "You should have woken me earlier," she said with a half laugh. "You know how cranky I get when I'm hungry." Everyone chuckled. I swallowed my sigh. That one line summed up the difference. Heather's needs were emergencies. Mine were invisible. After breakfast, we gathered around the tree. The gift exchange began, as it always did, youngest first. Kyle opened a sleek leather card holder, my gift to him. He smiled politely, thanked me, then moved on. Heather tore through wrapping paper like a child, her face lit with delight at each package. When she reached my gift concert tickets to her favorite band, she muttered a quick thanks before diving into the next box. Half my budget for the month dismissed in 2 seconds. When my turn finally came, the pattern was unmistakable. A generic scarf from Aunt Linda, bath products from a cousin, a department store gift card from my parents. Nothing personal, nothing that said, "We know you, we see you." As I folded the tissue paper neatly back into the bag, I remembered being 11 and breaking one of Mom's china plates. Dad had grounded me for 2 weeks, calling me careless. 3 years later, Heather had thrown an entire set of plates to the floor during a tantrum. It's just an accident, they had soothed, cleaning up while she sobbed. That memory stung sharper now as I held the impersonal scarf. During dinner, the injustice pressed harder. The turkey was golden, the table glittered with china, and the conversation circled endlessly around Heather's art, Heather's internship, Heather's bright future. At one point, I tried to share about a sustainable design project I had completed, a building I was proud of. Dad interrupted mid-sentence to ask Kyle about his residency plans. The table turned toward him instantly. My voice fell silent, drowned by their eager questions. I chewed slowly, the laughter around me muffled the clink of silverware echoing like static. Every ignored word was a reminder that my achievements were invisible in this family, that my role had never changed no matter how much I gave or how hard I worked. Later, as we gathered in the living room for the annual movie, the seating arrangement told the same story. Heather curled between Mom and Dad on the couch, Kyle in the recliner. I sat on the floor again, my back pressed against the table leg, my legs folded uncomfortably beneath me. The glow of the screen lit their smiling faces. Mine was hidden in shadow. I thought of all the years I had told myself next time would be different. Next birthday, next graduation, next Christmas. But each time the same scene played out. Heather in the spotlight, me in the corner. The ache inside me deepened, and with it came a dawning realization I wasn't just unlucky. I wasn't imagining it. This was the pattern. This was the truth. And truth has a way of breaking through no matter how long you've tried to bury it. Tomorrow morning, that truth would explode into the open, louder than ever, impossible to deny. Christmas morning always carried a kind of magic when I was a child. I used to rush downstairs hoping for surprises, believing maybe that day would be the one when my parents finally looked at me with the same sparkle they saved for Heather. At 32, I should have known better, but some part of me still held on. We gathered around the tree, the order never changed, youngest first. Kyle, as Heather's guest, opened his gifts first. He smiled, thanked everyone warmly, even complimented the leather card holder I had chosen for him. Then it was Heather's turn. She ripped through boxes with the same delight she had at 5 years old. Jewelry, clothes, gadgets, her lap filled quickly. When she reached my gift, the concert tickets I'd saved half a month's budget to buy, she barely glanced before tossing a quick thanks. My throat tightened. It was the same tone she used when I once gave her a $10 candle. My sacrifice didn't matter. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. His eyes shone with pride, his smile wide. "This year we have something special," he announced. "Heather, your mom and I are so proud of your accomplishments. We wanted to do something big to support your future." He handed her a gold-wrapped box. Heather squealed before she even opened it. When she lifted the lid, a silver Audi key glinted in the light. The room erupted. Heather screamed, jumping up and down. Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed as Dad led her outside. There it was, a brand new white Audi A4 in the driveway, a giant red bow draped across the hood. Its value was more than I made in an entire year. "You deserve this, sweetheart," Mom said, hugging Heather tight. "You need reliable transportation for your new gallery internship." I stood on the porch, arms wrapped around myself against the cold. My breath clouded in the air. The laughter, the pictures, the pride, it wasn't mine. It had never been mine. When we returned inside, cheeks pink from the snow, Mom suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, we almost forgot." She handed me a small box wrapped in leftover birthday paper. My heart fluttered despite myself. Maybe this was it. Maybe they had saved something meaningful for me too. I opened it slowly. Inside was a pink ceramic piggy bank. Next to it lay a single crisp $1 bill. For a moment the world tilted. I waited for someone to laugh, to say it was a joke. Instead, Mom smiled brightly. "That's our contribution to your future home, Hannah. Every journey begins with a single step." Silence filled the room. Even Aunt Linda, who usually filled gaps with chatter, said nothing. Heat rose to my cheeks. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear. "Wow," I managed, forcing a smile. "Thanks." Inside, something cracked open. 32 years of swallowing disappointment collapsed under the weight of a piggy bank and a single dollar. It wasn't just the gift. It was the message, clear as the snow outside. I would never be more than the afterthought. That moment was my breaking point. And before I tell you what happened, when I walked out of that house, before I share how one decision changed my life forever, let me ask you this. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent, accepted the dollar and smiled? Or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe now so you don't miss what came next. Because what came next was the moment I chose myself for the first time. The house was buzzing with excitement, voices rising as Heather posed beside her brand new Audi. Kyle snapped photos while my parents beamed, their joy radiating through every window of that house. But for me, the walls were closing in. The piggy bank sat heavy in my hand. The single dollar folded neatly inside like a cruel joke wrapped in ceramic. I slipped out the back door. The cold air hit me instantly, stinging my cheeks, filling my lungs with icy clarity. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I crossed the yard to the old maple tree. The swing still hung their rusted chains, biting into my gloves as I sat down. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. 32 years of chasing crumbs. 32 years of hoping that if I worked hard enough, smiled long enough, gave more than enough, they would finally love me the way they loved her. But every birthday candle stuck in a dinner roll, every ignored graduation, every empty word of "you'll be fine," had led me here, an adult holding a piggy bank while her sister drove off in a luxury car. The tears froze against my skin, but inside something was melting. It was the illusion. The hope that one day they would change. That one day I would matter equally. Sitting on that swing, I realized the truth. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the pattern. The way things had always been. The way they would always be. And in that breaking point, something unexpected surfaced: clarity. If I wanted something different, I would have to create it myself. No one was going to hand me the life I deserved. No one was going to gift me recognition in a box. I looked back at the house, glowing with Christmas lights, warm and full of voices. They hadn't noticed I was gone. They wouldn't, not until dessert. And even then, they would be more upset about the missing person in a family photo than about the daughter who was falling apart. That thought should have broken me. Instead, it freed me. I wiped my cheeks with the back of my glove and whispered into the frozen air, "No more." Because here's the truth. I wish someone had told me years earlier when love is conditional, when approval is rationed, when your presence is taken for granted. Walking away is not betrayal, it's survival. Let me pause to ask you, have you ever had that moment, that sudden clarity when you realized nothing would change unless you did? If you have, I want to hear it. Share your story in the comments. Because your turning point matters. The wind howled, carrying flakes across the yard. My jeans were soaked through my fingers, numb, but I sat there until the tears dried. By the time I stood, my decision was solid. I could not keep pretending. I could not keep begging for scraps of love that should have been freely given. Something had shifted deep inside me. The piggy bank was not a gift, it was a message. And I finally heard it. I walked back inside, past the sound of the football game, past Heather, chattering on the phone about her new car, past the kitchen where dirty dishes sat in the sink. No one noticed me. No one asked where I had been. And in that invisibility, I found my answer. Mott. I climbed the narrow stairs to the room that was no longer mine. Boxes of tax records and holiday decorations stared at me from the corners, silent proof that even my childhood space had been repurposed. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed, the piggy bank cold in my palm. For years I had convinced myself that if I just tried harder, they would see me. But tonight, for the first time, I knew better. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. One name flashed on the screen, Samantha, my best friend, my anchor, my chosen family long before I understood what that meant. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm despite the late hour. Merry Christmas, Hannah. How's the family circus this year? The laugh I tried to force out broke into a sob. It happened again, I whispered, worse than ever. Heather got a brand new Audi. I got a piggy bank with $1 inside. There was a pause, and then her outrage burst through. Are you serious? That's not just thoughtless, Hannah, that's cruel. Her words hit me like a lifeline. I explained everything, the car, the silence, the $1 contribution to my future home. By the time I finished, my voice was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I can't do this anymore, I admitted. Then don't, she said simply. Hannah, listen to me. My guest room is yours. Seattle is only 3 hours away. Your company has an office here. You could transfer. You could start over. Her suggestion was so obvious, so simple, but it hit me like lightning. I had been offered that transfer before. I had turned it down to stay close to family. But what was I staying close to? Neglect, comparison, a house that had never been home. But it's Christmas, I murmured, guilt still clinging like chains. Christmas will happen with or without you, Samantha said firmly. The question is, do you want another year of this? Another decade? Or do you want to build something better? I sat there staring at the peeling wallpaper, the sewing machine on my old desk, the piggy bank on the nightstand. And then the decision crystallized. Slowly, painfully, but with clarity sharper than I had ever known. I pulled my suitcase from the corner and began to pack. Not just the clothes I had brought, but pieces of my history, my high school tassel, a photo album of college friends, a small wooden box my grandfather had made for me. I didn't pack the weight of 32 years of invisibility that I left behind. On the desk I found a sheet of stationery. My pen shook as I wrote the only words I had left. I'm returning to Seattle today. The contrast between Heather's gift and mine made some things very clear. I need space to process our family dynamic and what role, if any, I want it to play in my future. Please don't contact me for a while. No apologies, no explanations to be twisted. Just a boundary, perhaps the first I had ever drawn. I folded the note and placed it neatly on the bed. Then I zipped my suitcase, lifted the box of mementos, and walked quietly down the stairs. The living room was glowing with the television. Heather laughed on the phone. Mom and Dad murmured about dessert. Kyle cheered at the game. No one noticed me slip past. In the kitchen, I set the note on the counter right where they couldn't miss it. I looked around once more, the fridge covered with Heather's drawings, the height chart that stopped tracking me at 10 but continued Heather's until college, the bulletin board displaying her internship letter but nothing of my promotion. I opened the door and stepped into the freezing night. My Honda waited old, but mine every mile earned with my own sweat. Beside it, Heather's Audi gleamed under the porch light, the red bow still bright. I slid the piggy bank into my coat pocket, not as a gift, but as a reminder. A reminder of why I was leaving and why I could never come back the same. The snow was falling harder by the time I pulled onto the main road, suitcase in the trunk, piggy bank on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed against the cup holder. For a fleeting second, my heart leapt. Maybe someone had noticed I was gone. Maybe Mom or Dad had finally realized what they had done. I glanced at the screen, a text from my mother. Do not forget to pay the utility bills due on the 28th. Not where are you, not are you safe. Just bills. A reminder I didn't need, a duty they expected me to carry out as always. My throat burned, but I kept driving. 10 minutes later, another buzz, this time from my father. Internet payment processes tomorrow. Make sure there is enough in your account. I laughed out loud, a sound sharp and bitter in the dark car. 32 years of being the responsible one, and even now as I drove away, that was all they saw me as. The one who handled things. The one who never needed checking on. Then the phone rang. My mother's voice spilled into voicemail. Amanda, where did you go? We are about to have dessert, and your aunt is asking for you. This is very inconsiderate timing. Inconsiderate timing, as if my breaking point should have been scheduled more conveniently. Message after message followed their tones, shifting from irritation to confusion, from guilt-tripping to outright dismissal. Your note is dramatic. It was just a piggy bank, it was cute. You are being childish. Heather's voice chimed in sharp and cold. Way to ruin Christmas. You are just jealous of my car. Each word stabbed, but in a way it also confirmed the truth. They still didn't see me. They never had. And I finally understood they never would. Snow blurred the highway. I pulled off at the next exit headlights, guiding me to a diner glowing against the storm. Gloria's all-day breakfast, the neon sign flickering, but warm. I pushed open the doorbells jingling and stepped into the smell of coffee and pie crust. A silver-haired waitress with kind eyes handed me a menu. Traveling in this weather, sit anywhere, honey. She poured me coffee without asking, and for the first time that night I felt noticed. When she saw my tears, she slid a slice of pie across the table. On the house. Nobody should cry alone on Christmas. Her kindness broke me. I sobbed quietly, words spilling out to a stranger who cared more in one moment than my parents had in decades. I told her I had left my family. She nodded, unsurprised. I walked away at 27. Hardest and best thing I ever did. Blood makes you related. Love makes you family. Her name was Gloria, 72 years old, owner of the diner for 3 decades. She told me about the family she had built. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, people who respected her, who showed up. A chosen family. Her words lit something inside me. Maybe I could do the same. Maybe leaving wasn't an ending. Maybe it was the first real beginning. As the storm thickened outside, Gloria packed me a slice of pie to go and made me promise to call someone when I reached my destination. Her gentle insistence felt like protection, the kind I had never received at home. And here's where I want to leave you with a thought. Sometimes the real turning point in a story doesn't come with anger or fireworks. It comes with quiet kindness from a stranger. Have you ever experienced that? Someone outside your family showing you more care than the ones who should have think about it. Because what happened next in my story proved that small acts of compassion can change everything. I left the diner that night with pie in a paper bag and hope in my chest. I wasn't just running anymore. I was moving toward something, toward Seattle, toward freedom, toward the chance to build a family defined not by obligation, but by love. What I didn't know was that the road ahead would test me in ways I couldn't imagine. The storm finally passed, and with it, so did the life I had clung to for far too long. By the time I reached Seattle, Samantha was waiting at her apartment door, arms open wide. She hugged me so tight I almost collapsed into her. "Welcome home," she whispered. And for the first time I believed her. The first few days felt like decompression. I slept late, walked the rain-slick streets under my umbrella, breathed air that didn't carry the weight of expectation. At night, Samantha poured us wine, listened as I raged, cried, and confessed 32 years of buried hurt. She never told me I was overreacting. She never dismissed my pain. She just listened. That alone felt revolutionary. I emailed my supervisor about a transfer, and to my surprise, she responded with support. "The Seattle office has been asking for someone with your skills," she said. Within weeks, the paperwork was processed. By January 15th, I was no longer the outsider in Portland. I was the new senior designer in Seattle. Walking into that office on my first day was surreal. My colleagues introduced themselves with genuine warmth. My creative director actually looked at my portfolio and said, "This is impressive." Words I had craved for years but never heard from the people who should have spoken them first. For the first time, my work wasn't diminished. It wasn't a placeholder. It mattered. Outside of work, I began building a life of my own choosing. I joined a local architecture society, attended book club meetings in a cozy Capitol Hill bookstore, even signed up for a pottery class I'd always wanted to try. Each small step stitched together a community of people who saw me not as the responsible one, not as the afterthought, but as Hannah. Therapy became my anchor. Dr. Keller, a gentle but firm woman with streaks of silver in her hair, listened as I read aloud the emails from my parents. "Notice how every line is about them," she said. "Their pain, their confusion, their disappointment. Not a single acknowledgement of yours." That truth settled heavy but liberating. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was neglected. And naming it was the first step to healing. At night in my new apartment, with wide windows and light that spilled onto my sketchbooks, I placed the piggy bank on the windowsill. Every week that I honored my boundaries, I slipped $1 inside. Not as savings, but as proof. Proof that I was choosing myself 1 week at a time. By spring, the bank was half full, each bill a reminder that love isn't something you earn by being silent. It's something you deserve by existing. And I want to pause here to tell you this. If you've ever had to walk away to reclaim yourself, know this community is your space. Hit subscribe, share your own story, and be part of something built on respect, not obligation. Because none of us should carry the weight of invisibility alone. My career flourished. My life flourished. For the first time in 32 years, I was building a foundation not on scraps of recognition, but on self-worth. And each time I glanced at that piggy bank, I didn't see dismissal anymore. I saw resilience. But healing doesn't erase the past. It reshapes it. And soon I would be tested again because my family wasn't done trying to pull me back into their world. And I had to decide, would I hold the line, or would I let them rewrite my story again? Atani. It was a gray April afternoon when I saw him. I had just returned from lunch, coffee in hand, when I noticed a familiar figure standing awkwardly in the lobby of my office building. My father. He looked smaller somehow, his suit wrinkled, his eyes darting nervously. In his hand was a worn manila envelope. For a moment, instinct screamed at me to turn around to hide until he left. but I had promised myself something new. I would no longer run from confrontation. I approached. "Dad," I said simply. He turned startled, then tried to smile. "Hannah, we need to talk, not through emails, not through silence, properly." I hesitated, then gestured to the cafe across the street. 20 minutes. That's all I can give you during my workday. We sat at a corner table, the hum of voices around us keeping the air civil. His Americano sat untouched, steam curling into the air. I held a cup of green tea, hands trembling, but steady enough to raise to my lips. "Your mother and I don't understand why you've done this," he began without preamble. "Leaving like that over a Christmas gift, it seems extreme, even for you." Even for you. The old criticism laced with disbelief. I almost laughed. "It wasn't about the gift," I said quietly. "It was the final straw in a pattern that's lasted my entire life." His brow furrowed. "What pattern?" I stared at him incredulous. "Heather receives a $35,000 car. I receive a piggy bank and a dollar bill. Can you truly not see the disparity?" "She needed a car," he replied quickly. "You have your Honda." "A car I bought myself," I snapped, my voice sharper than intended. "Just like I paid for my education, my rent, my entire life. While you and Mom gave Heather everything." "That's not fair, Hannah. We raised you, put food on the table, kept a roof over your head." "You did the legal minimum," I said, my throat tight. "While giving Heather every advantage, tuition, rent, European trips, now a luxury car. And every time I asked for acknowledgement, I was told I didn't need it, that I'd be fine." He leaned back, discomfort etched into his features. "You were always the responsible one. You never needed the help." I felt my chest crack open with years of unsaid words. I needed recognition. I needed to know I mattered as much as she did, that my hard work was seen, that I was loved equally, not just handed the role of caretaker while she was the precious one. He stared into his coffee for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "We never meant to make you feel less important. We are proud of you. You've always been capable, independent." "Independence forced on a child isn't a gift, Dad. It's abandonment." Silence hung between us, heavy and unyielding. For once, I didn't fill it with apologies or explanations. I let it sit. Finally, he asked, almost pleading, "Will you come home? Your mother misses you." I shook my head. "This is my home now. Seattle. My life is here. A good life." His eyes watered, though, whether from regret or wounded pride, I couldn't tell. "And we're not part of it." "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "That depends on whether you and Mom can respect who I actually am, not who you needed me to be for Heather's sake." I stood gathering my things. "I have to get back to work." He nodded, shoulders slumped, a man who had lost control of a story he thought he owned. As I walked back across the street, my hands shook, but my chest felt lighter. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without apology. That night, I slipped another dollar into the piggy bank on my windowsill. 13 bills now. 13 weeks of boundaries. Each one proof that I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was the woman who had chosen herself. Archie. June came with warm breezes and a wedding invitation that shook me. My cousin Jessica, one of the few relatives who had shown kindness after I left, was getting married. The cream-colored envelope sat on my counter for 3 days before I opened it. Attending meant facing my parents, facing Heather, facing everything I had fought to escape. But declining felt wrong. Jessica had reached out when no one else did. So I said yes, with boundaries. Samantha came with me as my +1. We booked a hotel instead of staying with family, arrived just before the ceremony, and planned to leave the morning after. For once, I controlled the terms. The wedding was beautiful, held in a garden overlooking the Willamette River. Jessica glowed in her gown, her joy untouched by family politics. But even before the vows ended, I spotted them, my parents stiff in their seats, Heather beside them quieter than usual. At the reception, Samantha and I sat with Jessica's college friends, laughing easily, breathing freely. But eventually, Mom found me. Her smile was too bright, her voice too loud. "Hannah, can we talk?" She led me to a corner near the bar. "You look well. Seattle must agree with you." She tried to sound casual, but her eyes scanned me like a doctor searching for proof of illness. Then her tone sharpened. "Your father has not been the same since you left. Holidays have been miserable. Heather is struggling too. Why did you do this to us?" I took a breath, grounding myself in every therapy session, every dollar I had slipped into that piggy bank. I left a note. I explained I needed space. "I've told you I'm safe, but you never asked why I needed space." Her face flushed. "Because of a piggy bank, that's ridiculous." "No," I said firmly. "Because of a lifetime of being invisible. Because of graduations you missed. Because of achievements ignored. Because of a car for Heather and $1 for me. It was never about the gift, it was about the pattern." She faltered, looking at the floor. "We never meant to make you feel less loved." "But you did," I replied, "and intention doesn't erase impact." The next morning they came to my hotel for breakfast, both parents together, dressed as if for church. For 2 hours we spoke truths we had all avoided. They were defensive then, remorseful, then defensive again. But I didn't bend. For the first time, I demanded equal standing. "If you want a relationship with me," I told them, "it must be built on respect. I will not return to the old dynamic." They nodded, not fully understanding, but not rejecting either, for now that was enough. Heather surprised me most. She approached me at the reception, her designer glow dimmed her frame thinner. "The Audi's gone," she confessed quietly. "Dad lost his job. Things are different now. I never realized how much they did for me until they couldn't anymore. And how little they did for you. I'm sorry." Her words didn't heal everything, but they cracked the wall between us. For once, she saw me, and that mattered. By December, 1 year after I had driven away from that glowing house, my life was unrecognizable. My Seattle apartment felt like home, my career had flourished, and my circle of friends, my chosen family, was strong. That Christmas I hosted dinner myself. Samantha, her boyfriend, colleagues, my pottery instructor, even Gloria from the diner joined me. The room glowed with laughter, with love freely given. On my mantel sat the piggy bank, now filled with bills. Not savings, but symbols. $52 one for every week I had kept my boundaries. It had become my most meaningful possession, a reminder that sometimes the smallest, cruelest gift can become the catalyst for freedom. And here's what I want to leave you with. Sometimes you have to walk away from what breaks you to discover what can build you. If you've ever had to start over, if you've ever carried a symbol of your strength, I want you to share it. And if this story resonated, subscribe and stay, because the next story I'll tell might be the one you need to hear most. Because leaving wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Looking back now, it feels like a lifetime ago that I sat in my parents' living room holding a pink piggy bank and a single-dollar bill. At the time, it felt like humiliation. Today, it feels like liberation. That tiny, ridiculous gift became the symbol of everything I'd endured, and the moment I finally chose something different. Seattle gave me more than a change of address. It gave me a chance to rebuild. My work flourished, yes, but more importantly, I flourished. I learned what it means to be surrounded by people who see you, who celebrate your victories without competition, who offer kindness without conditions. I discovered that family is not only the people you are born to, it is the people who stand with you when it matters. The piggy bank still sits on my mantel, now full of dollar bills. Each one marks a week of choosing myself. 52 weeks of self-respect, 52 weeks of boundaries, 52 weeks of knowing that my worth is not determined by whether someone else recognizes it. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: you are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to build a life where you are not invisible. And sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones that lead to the most beautiful beginnings. So tell me, what symbol represents your strength? What reminder do you hold on to when the world tries to make you feel small? Share it, because your story matters too. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is not what comes wrapped in a box. It's the courage to begin again.